channel, and I am really excited for a special video that you will get to see today, that I am going to be talking with Hollie from the Etsy shop Castle and Kingdoms, and she is on Instagram, and I will have all of the things linked below. And she made some beautiful art, some Cinderella art, and I'll hold it up later on so you can see it, but you did see it in my at the time that this goes up in my latest Cinderella Chronicles. I will have shown the art and talked about it then. And Allie from Allie McGlynn Illustration. And she made a beautiful, she has a lot of Cinderella art on her, in her shop as well. But in particular, I was really drawn to this Cinderella profile. So thank you, ladies, for coming on today. And I guess first, I'd be interested in hearing from you about when you first realized that art was a passion for you, and what kind of techniques are your personal favorites?
Ooh, who wants to go first? Hollie, do you want to go?
Do you want me to go first? So, I mean, first thing was probably from my family. So my great granddad used to draw and paint. And then also in school, I had quite a creative school. And then I went on to secondary school as well, which I think is kind of like your high school. So I studied art, and then I went into college and I did art and design and media, and just kind of progressed through that way. So I've been brought up in quite an artistic family. So I think it just runs in the blood, so to say. So yeah, I think that's where mine comes from.
Mm-hmm. That's great. So you kind of saw other people around you doing art. And
yeah, like our house was surrounded by like my great granddad's drawings and paintings, and my mum was quite arts and crafty as well, so we kind of picked up on it that way. And I've just kind of fallen into my own way. So that was how I kind of progressed into my little world, I'd say.
Very cool. And then you're more on the graphic design end. And so maybe you could talk about what your favorite techniques with that are.
So I studied graphics with my art and design in college, and so much has changed since doing that as well. I have to say, like, you've got Photoshop and other, software that we can use, and there's other things in the UK that I use. So it's really a mixed media. So again, it's just a case of me finding things that I can tweak and change, and putting my own style of fonts on, doing it that way. But also I love looking into like the old kind of style of things. So although it's very graphic, I like to have that old kind of medium feel to it as well. So yeah, I mean, I'd love to draw constantly, but for me to do that, and time is just, it's just not going to happen. So it's way easier with a graphic based type thing for me.
I do think that is something that I really like about your art, is that you are doing it with a computer and with modern technology, but it does, like you said, it has this really charming vintage feel to it. So it's cool to have the two kind of converge.
Yeah.
Very cool. And then what about you, Allie?
So I'm pretty similar. My mom was also an artist, and so I grew up around her being very creative, and my dad is an engineer. So he's more technical, but he also loves Disney, and like, he has a huge imagination. So I think, yeah, I just always grew up in a very creative and imaginative household. And same thing in high school, I was always really focused on art. I think from a very young age, I was determined that I was going to go to art school. And like, as soon as I found out that art college was a thing, I was like, this is it. Like, this is all I want to do. So yeah, so in high school, I was very focused in art. And then after high school, I went to Massachusetts College of Art and Design in Boston. And I studied sculpture there, actually, which I guess I've had sort of a very complex history with art to where I've gotten to now. So in high school, I was always focused on like painting and watercolors, and I did very sort of hyper realistic stuff. I think because it was very technical, and it was like, it came kind of easy to me in that sense. And it's always been very challenging for me to do stuff, just out of my head, and, more whimsical and stylized art. But that's the art that I've always been drawn to and been really passionate about. So going into college, your freshman year, you have to take all these like basic level courses, and they introduce you to like basically every major that you could go into. And something about like working hands-on with materials and tools and stuff, I just loved, and it was something I never really had exposure to. So I ended up majoring in sculpture, and completed my degree in that. And then after that, I was kind of feeling like, all right, I don't really know what to do now. I don't really know what I am eligible to do as a job besides become a welder. And I don't know that I want to do that right now. So, my parents talked to me and they're like, well, you really love, design and building and working with materials. So what about engineering? And I was like, I don't even know what engineering is. Like, I really didn't. I remember Googling like different types of engineering and being like, maybe mechanical sounds like what I like. Mm-hmm. So I ended up going back to school and getting another degree in mechanical engineering. And it was during that degree, because my coursework was so technical and just like very, kind of left-brained, like my brain was just craving creativity. So I think at that time, like Instagram was becoming really big, and I started discovering illustrators on there. And I was like, oh my God, like this art is so beautiful and amazing. And like, this is what I want to be making. Like, this is what brings me joy. But like I said, it was something that always really challenged me. So it took a long time to get where I'm at now. And I feel like I'm finally, really happy with my style. And it's been a journey, but that was a really long-winded answer. And I'm sorry, but that's kind of how I got to the illustration that I'm at now.
No, thank you. It's interesting to hear about. And it makes me think about how you're like an engineer by day. Anthony Trollope, the Victorian author, he was a postman. And so he delivered mail. And when he'd be traveling, because he would go really far sometimes on the train, he would write novels. So I love that, kind of you do want to really pursue art if it's your passion, but also you have to be able to pay bills. So it's neat to find kind of a third way to do it. And then Allie, what is your favorite technique personally, or one of your favorites?
Yeah, so I love painting with gouache, which is a type of paint that's kind of in between watercolor and acrylic, but it has like really vibrant, beautiful matte colors. So I love working with gouache, but during the past few years, I've started doing like paper sculptures and paper illustrations, which I think for me was kind of the perfect marriage between illustration and engineering, because it allows me to sort of have to plan out like, okay, how am I going to make a 3D structure with paper, but then like also bring my, illustrations to life, So that's my favorite process. I love working with paper and building things. It's very tedious and time consuming, but if I could just do that all day, I would.
I guess, yeah, maybe, I guess if you like it enough, you're willing for it to be tedious and time consuming then.
Yeah.
So then I guess we could talk about the specific art. So this is yours, Allie. Oh, she's so cute. So what kind of gave you the inspiration to do a profile? Because that's not how I think it's a really unique idea. And so what maybe kind of was your inspiration for this?
I think like when I typically draw people and figures, like I always kind of do this side profile look anyways, just because I feel like it's kind of like flattened and like mid-century kind of looking, and I just like that look. Mm-hmm. So that's like what in my just normal illustrations, how I draw people. And then I thought, oh, this would be really fun just to do this with all the princesses as well. Yeah. Combine two of my passions into one. So I think that's what sparked that. And it was something that I could easily do on my iPad. So like I could just, while I'm like watching TV or eating dinner, just doodle some princesses. And I was like, oh, these are actually really cute and fun. So kind of just progressed into stickers and prints.
Very cool. Because the princess profiles is a pretty new addition to your shop.
Yeah, they are. Yep.
Very cool. And then here is Hollie's. So Hollie, what was your kind of the journey you took to make this piece?
So I don't know if you have them in. I think you do have them in the States, but I don't know if you've seen on Disney. They've got the journals, the book cover journals. You know, in like the original like opening titles.
Yes, yes.
So I've started collecting those, and I've also got some old fairy tale books from when I was a little girl, and I adore that kind of, you know, that magical book title and the cover of a book. So I thought, you know what, I'll do my own, and it just kind of sparked from there. And I always do the classic three in the Disney girls. Like I take inspiration from them. So you've got the Cinderella, the Snow White, the Sleeping Beauty, but I'm always trying to sort of tie into that old feel, that kind of, you know, that nostalgic feeling of that fairy tale book. I mean, I had so many when I was younger, so I just wanted to capture that really. So that kind of what sparked those little bits that I did on those ones, to be honest, and how I envisioned, you know, those books to me really. So that's how it sparked those.
That's great. And then I love how you have kind of a tagline on each one. So this one is a fairy tale like no other, full of courage and kindness. And that is Cinderella, courage and kindness. I love it. So yeah, I am I was just so excited to find both of your art on Etsy, because there is a lot of Cinderella art out there that's just louder than I wanted. And I felt like there was a real elegance and but also a love of storytelling in both your pieces. So then Hollie, you touched on fairy tales. So do you guys have not Disney yet, but kind of just good old fashioned fairy tales? Do you have a favorite fairy tale?
So the two of mine, and even, you know, taking Disney out of context, would be Rapunzel and Snow White. But I'm talking, you know, original raw Snow White. You know, no fairy tale feel about it. But having those stories and read those stories when we were younger, you know, it's a life lesson. And I think with those, they have a fairy tale feel with them. But those two, I adore. I love them so much.
I did see a quote from Kate Blanchett that I liked when they were talking about making Cinderella, that she thinks fairy tales are really special in that a lot of books for children are about a very safe world, which you don't want children to feel scared all the time. But I think fairy tales, she was saying, they're special because it shows you sometimes the world can be really harsh. And like you said, like the life lessons in there. And I mean, Snow White, the Disney cartoon, is dark enough already. So the fairy tale itself is really dark. But then I think it's I don't know, there's a special quality then about it, that it feels like you can really kind of take lessons from it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you know, it's like with any fairy tale really, but with those ones, I think it gives you enough when you're growing up as well. You know, you don't really realize until you're older what you've read, and like you said, those life lessons, I mean, obviously, you know, things that happen in them are not going to happen to you, but experiences that, you know, you can take from there, you can relate to yourself. And I think with those ones as well, for me, with those two stories, again, they were read to me as a child through family, through friends. That's why I relate to those so much.
Very cool. Very cool. And then you, Allie?
I think probably Cinderella. Cliche, but I actually just I reread the fairy tale the other day, and I'd kind of forgotten how not Disney like it is, and how it's actually a lot shorter too than, you know, you'd imagine it to be. But again, yeah, I think it's just really interesting. And I know we were talking about like the horror and suspense movies earlier, and like there's just, yeah, something interesting about this like darker side to them that is very it's just very interesting, I think.
So I got this. This is from Surla Loon Fairy Tales, and they have one for Sleeping Beauty. I think they have one for Sleeping Beauty, for Rapunzel, The Little Mermaid. There's a whole line, and this is 345 versions of Cinderella. And what I think is like really especially interesting and intriguing about Cinderella is how I think something about the format of it makes it conducive to take on traditions from other cultures. And the original one is an Egyptian one named Rhodopis, and they think she was a real person. And the pharaoh, he finds her beautiful shoe and is like, oh, the woman who, you know, who had the shoe must be the most beautiful woman ever. I must have her, and I'm going to execute my 24 concubines so I can have her. And I love that she shows up and she's like, you're not going to execute them. Obviously, I'm paraphrasing, but she's a really strong, fierce woman, and I love that. But then, yeah, Ali, how you're saying it is darker. Then there's a Greek one where there are 3 sisters in this. They're not stepsisters, but the 2 older sisters are like, let's weave together with our mother and our younger sister, and whoever's thread breaks first, we're going to eat. And so then the mother's thread breaks several times. And the first time they're like, well, you gave birth to us, we'll give you a break. But then it breaks 3 times and they eat her. But then what's interesting is it's kind of like Cinderella, she refuses to partake in this, and she saves the mother's bones, and they turn into diamonds and rubies. I think that's what it is.
Wow.
So like her kind behavior is rewarded. So yeah, I do think, like, obviously I like Disney, but I also like looking at older fairy tales. So just fairy tales are really special because there are so many different forms they can take on.
Yeah, definitely. That book sounds fascinating.
It does.
It's so fascinating. And it apparently there are more countries that do have Cinderella retellings than countries that don't. Yeah. So I had no idea, you know, I just decided I was going to do the Cinderella Chronicles project. I had no idea how many versions were out there. So yeah, it's very cool to see. So then regarding Disney, do you have a favorite Disney princess or a couple of favorites?
Ali, you go first, because I'm still trying to narrow mine down.
I would say I don't really have like a favorite Disney princess. Every time like I'm at the parks or anything and I have to like try and pick one princess to like buy, you know, a souvenir with, I can never do it. But I think I would probably say Cinderella is my favorite, just overall story, and, you know, from like a visual perspective, my favorite movie. So I'll go with Cinderella, but I would say I just love them all.
Very cool. And then you could, because we've messaged a little bit about Mary Blair. So you were talking about the visuals in Cinderella. And I have to be honest, I did not know how to say, what is the painting style that she did? And you said it earlier in the interview. What?
Gouache?
Yes, gouache. I thought it was like gauche or something for how it looked, so I had no idea how to say it. So yeah, was Mary Blair the main illustrator for Cinderella?
So Mary Blair was kind of like almost like a cinematographer. So she essentially was a concept artist. So she would make sort of like the color themes and the lighting for these scenes, but she would paint them all in gouache. And they were just these stunning works of art just on their own, even though they were just sort of meant to be concept paintings. And truly, like when you look at her paintings and you like watch the film, like it is Mary Blair. Like, you know, there is no, like her whole look created that film.
Very cool, very cool. And then Hollie, a favorite or a couple of favorite Disney princesses.
So, I mean, I think it's quite obvious, but my all-time favorite princess is Snow White. Like, I adore her. She's so sweet and so kind, maybe a bit naive, but I think that's what makes her. But I'd have to say again, like, modern princess would be Rapunzel, and I love Elsa. I mean, I know, you know, again, she's kind of created from a book and kind of, you know, inspired from certain books, but she's pretty damn cool, without the pun as well.
I also love Elsa. I think she's just so powerful and so strong.
Exactly.
Very cool. And then what was I going to say? Oh, so as far as fairy tale retellings go, have you ladies, do you dabble in fairy tale retellings? It's you know, something that I like to read, but I'm not sure if you read them as well.
I don't think I've gotten into many, but it's something that I want to get into. So I will definitely take any recommendations that you have, Kate.
Yeah.
I'm sure you have a whole separate video on it that I should watch.
Yeah, for Cinderella specifically, well, maybe you've both read Ella Enchanted. That's a middle grade.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I love that one. And I love that it has, I like when it takes the kind of the bare bones of the story and then turns it into something totally original and of its own. But then another one that I really enjoyed it's called Cinders, the Untold Story of Cinderella.
I think I did. Is it like a steampunk one?
It's not steampunk, but it is unique in that she cross-dresses to compete in jousting tournaments. And so she gets to know the prince while she's dressed as a boy. And it's just really, I like that. I think a downfall of Cinderella can be kind of this insta love, and they don't like, well, how are you going to do after after the honeymoon? And yes, you're attracted to each other, but that's why I think it's cool in fairy tale retellings when they can have them meet beforehand, or even in the newer Disney like live action, they meet in the forest and have this conversation.
Yeah.
So Cinders, the Untold Story of Cinderella, I really liked, and it had just a fun fairy tale element sprinkled in, but it also felt really I don't know, maybe like Ivanhoe or something. So it was cool.
You reminded me, I did read one, and I think it was also called Cinder, but it was like about Cinderella. She was like a robot or something, and it was like very futuristic.
Yes, that's the first in the Lunar Chronicles. And and it's funny because I don't think about that one as much, because the subsequent ones in the Lunar Chronicles, like Cress and Winter, I preferred over it, but I still liked it. That whole series is really cool. And I would just love, like, what would Charles Perrault think of Cinderella being transformed into like a YA dystopian science fiction fairy tale retelling? Very
Totally.
unique.
Yeah, I did think it was very unique and a very different retelling. So I liked that one.
Yeah. So this is a very specific question, but I think I can trust that you will both have an answer. What is your favorite Disney animal?
Oh,
I know there are many.
we both oohed.
I think maybe Marie. That's the first one that comes to mind.
Yeah.
Cats, and I feel like Marie's the most special. But that's a really good question. I might have to think a little bit on it. What do you think, Hollie?
I think, you know what? I always forget, and then I realize how much I love him. Would be Miko from Pocahontas.
Yeah.
Like, he's just so cute and so mischievous. And then you sort of forget about him, and then you're like, actually, why do I forget? He is such a cool little character. So I think, yeah, I'm gonna go with Miko.
He's really, like, I love the contrast of like the straight-laced pug. I can't remember his name, but
oh my gosh, yes.
And like the biscuit stealing.
Yes.
And...
That scene is genius. The biscuit stealing scene is so funny.
It is. I think as far as animals go, I think it has to be Pascal from Tangled.
Yes.
Really like him. And then combining him with the horse Maximus, just kind of a similar dynamic.
Yeah.
Yes.
He's cute.
Very, very fun. Yes. And then just in general, kind of some of your favorite books. I thought that would be cool. I always want to hear, what are some of people's favorite books? So again, these are some of your favorites. You don't have to feel like you have to pick your absolute ultimate favorite, but just some that come to mind when you think about books that you love.
I have a little stack here, but they are pretty Disney and specific. But I will say that this book, so this is The Queens of Animation by Natalia Holt. And this was my favorite book that I read last year. I absolutely loved it. It basically just goes, if you're like interested in Disney history or animation history, or just even like the women of animation, like it goes into everything. And it's just fascinating at how there was all these super influential women that worked at the Disney studios back in the 30s, 40s, 50s, who just were so discredited and like did not get any, acknowledgements for all the work they were doing, which was equal to their male counterparts. And it was just so fascinating. And especially if you're interested in Mary Blair, it of course goes well into her life story and really kind of puts you in her shoes. And it's pretty fascinating because even though she was this like very, whimsical and imaginative woman, she actually had quite a dark home life as well. And you can really understand how she was sort of escaping that in her artwork and in these sort of worlds she was creating. And I just absolutely loved it. They even go into like some of like the engineering, the innovations that they used in the early animation industry and things like that. So it ticked all the boxes for me. So that was like my favorite book of last year. But I also just wanted to share a book that I got in yesterday that I think you both will love. I nearly died when I got it. So it's a cloth bound version of Cinderella. And I got this off of Book Depository. So I think it's a UK book. And I've never seen it in the States here, but it is like so stunning. And I didn't know this when I bought it, but it actually has like all the like concept artwork and illustrations inside. So let me find a good one. So it tells you the whole story, but it has artwork from the movie. It has Mary Blair's artwork. It has like, sketches and things. Like, it's just beautiful. Like, I absolutely am fawning over it. So highly recommend it with you.
Sorry, can we see the end papers?
Oh my God, yes. Like,
wow,
so pretty. And they have a bunch of them actually. I went on and ordered a few more because I was like, I need all of these in my life. But it's almost like the Penguin cloth bound classics, but like the Disney version. And I'm just overjoyed with them.
Ali, honestly, like I have all of them in my Amazon like favorites. There are so many of them, so many, and I literally want them all. There's one that my mum loves, Dumbo, and they've got the Dumbo one, and it's just the most adorable little book. But honestly, they sell out here in the UK so fast. So if you can get hold of them, get them now, because honestly they sell like hotcakes here, honestly. So definitely get them, because I had them all saved in my Amazon basket. So
I'm surprised it's a UK based thing, because I just think of all things Disney being more US based, but I mean, anybody can make great art with Disney. So that's
exactly.
yeah. I appreciate Dumbo, but I cannot make it through it. I am a sensitive soul, and the baby, as soon as the baby mind scene hits, I'm like, I'm done.
I agree. I'm with you there.
No, I'm with you. This is coming from the girl who also cries still. Like, she can watch again Pocahontas and I'll still cry. I will still cry when John Smith is on that ship. Oh, blub. I am honestly, I'll cry at anything. I'm an emotional soul.
Yes. Yeah, I really
cry.
Yeah, it does not take a lot. Actually, my first Disney movie I saw in theaters was the Little Mermaid, and I don't remember seeing it. I just know my dad he gave me the movie ticket, and I had been to see it. But the first one I remember seeing in the theater was Pinocchio. They had done like I don't know, what is it, a revival showing or whatever it's called, and I remember screaming and crying, and my dad had to carry me out of the theater because I think it was the whale that scared me so much. I feel like there's a lot that can scare you. There's the island of, what is it?
Pleasure Island.
Island. And then Stromboli, like the puppeteer. There's a lot of scary stuff in there, but I remember screaming and crying, and I felt so bad. I'm sure my dad was like, this is going to be so special. We're going to share this old Disney movie together.
You're not the only one that would cry, honestly. When we used to go, I've been taken to Disneyland Paris, obviously with my proximity to France being so close. The ride, the Pinocchio dark ride, which is the same that they have in Disneyland. Honestly, the whale, you're right, Kate, the whale. I would not go on that ride because it would petrify me. So you're right, and you brought back those emotions of the whale just coming towards you. So you're not the only one. It's our childhood, isn't it, really? We have to, be strong.
Yes. I'm glad I'm not alone with that. So did you have any favorite books come to mind, Holly?
You know what? I mean, I've got a huge selection of, Disney art books. They're all upstairs at the moment. But totally unrelated, things like the Princess Diaries. I think people forget they were books. It wasn't just a film. They were books. And I had, all as a young teenager, all of, I think it was Meg Cabot. I think that was the author's name. I had all of them. They were like the thing to have, and I loved them. So again, I think with my books, I like a bit of fantasy. I like to escape, things like, again, not Disney, Twilight. I could admit I binged all of those books. I love them. But yeah, I have books upstairs of, Disney art, illustration, that type of thing. But I think with me, I like a bit of romance. I like to escape. So that they're kind of I might seem a little bit childish with my reads, but I love them so much.
Yeah, no, not childish. That is, I found increasingly like I want genre fiction. So like I want fairy tale retellings, I want mysteries, I want romances. I just want something to sweep me away while I'm reading.
No, you're right. I think as well, like here when I was in school, and it's probably the same for you guys, but I always find when I talk to people in the States that our education was so different. So, I've been brought up on the traditional Shakespeare, constantly reading Romeo and Juliet and Macbeth, and you kind of get to a point where you just need to escape that type of read. You have 5 years of reading that type of book. So when I was going through school and having those books released, it was such an escape. So I think that's where I grabbed my love for fantasy and books from, really, as well.
That is so fun. Yeah, there's nothing wrong with good old fashioned fun, or just good fun.
Yeah.
Holly, there is a very fun reading vlog I think you would enjoy, where Emma, her channel is called Drinking by My Shelf, and she reads the entire Princess Diaries series in 24 hours.
Oh my gosh.
And she does it with her sister. Like they stay up all night and they have a whole schedule they have to stick to by.
Oh, I love it.
Yeah, but I'm sad. I worry I missed the boat on the books, because I remember my older sister reading some of them. And so I don't know. Do you think it's something you can jump into as an adult, or do you think you kind of need the nostalgia factor?
You know what? My thing is, just give it a go. It's the kind of thing where, I think after a few pages if you're going to stick with that book or not. And for me, I could probably reread them now and have no issue. It'll probably be a few days of reading each night, just to get you by. It's easy reading for us. But I say go for it. I think, if you want to read a book that is, dedicated to teenagers, or, is a little bit more of an adult theme to it, I think go for it. There's no stopping you. There's no boundaries of reading. It's not saying you can or can't. And I think that's the beauty with picking up a book.
That was very well put. I liked that. I kind of, how you said, like, you'll know within the first few pages. I am very much that kind of a reader. Some people, I admire their like perseverance. They're willing to like stick it out until the very end, because sometimes they've had a book that, the last third they realize is like, okay, now I love this. But I have started thinking, like, I need to think of this. A book is auditioning for me when I start it.
Yeah.
So it has to impress me. But I am very much like a character reader. And so there was a book, I was willing to make an exception for this, and it's called The Daughter of the Forest by Juliette Morellier. And it's a retelling of the Six Swans fairy tale, which I didn't really know about this fairy tale. And they get a wicked stepmother, and she transforms 6 brothers into swans. And then there's one sister, and she has to make them with her hands. She has to weave these shirts for each of them out of I can't remember the name of gorseweed or something. And so it's going to totally like scar her hands and prick her hands every time she uses it. And she's also not allowed to speak the entire time that she's like making these. So I loved it. It was such a dark kind of premise for it. But it was very slow going. And I was like, this is just going to be what I'm reading this week. But it was so character driven. And I loved the really like up close and personal. You felt like these characters were flesh and blood. So I was willing to kind of put in the effort. But then sometimes I'm like, I just need you to impress me immediately.
It's true. It's true.
It's so funny that you bring those books up because I remember I had one and it was like a guide to being a princess, and it was like this beautiful pink hardcover book, and I loved it. But like thinking back now, it was so funny. It would like tell you like how to like pluck your eyebrows correctly and like all this like ridiculous stuff. But I just loved that book. There was something about it that I was like, oh, I can be a princess.
That's so fun. Do either of you remember, since I was talking about remembering Pinocchio, do you remember maybe the first Disney movie you saw?
Oh,
I think mine might.
Can you remember?
I think for some reason Cinderella sticks out in my mind.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to say that one, but I also feel like it's kind of interesting as a kid when you watch all the Disney movies and you have no sense of time. So like in my mind, I'm like, oh yeah, these all came out, at the same time together last year. But like in reality, Snow White came out in the 30s and Cinderella was in the 50s. And like, I just think it's so fascinating now to watch, the progression over time. But I think Cinderella was probably one of the first ones that I can remember.
Very cool.
See, I think mine was in reverse. I think I watched things, like The Jungle Book and again, like Pocahontas, those films. It wasn't until I was a little bit more grown up I watched the fairy tale films, like the classics of Snow White and things like that. So, and the Aristocats, those types of films. I think I can vaguely remember having an obsession with Pocahontas when I was younger, and I wanted to dress up like her, you name it. But the classics, and then I watched the fairy tale films. There's so many.
There are really so many. Yeah, I think particularly for younger kids, I remember like I started off my son with Robin Hood. That is such a good cartoon. Like I still love that film. And The Sword and the Stone, in 101 Dalmatians.
Oh yeah.
I do think like I showed him Beauty and the Beast too young, and he was really scared of the Beast then. He wanted me to like inspect his bedroom to make sure the Beast wasn't there.
Oh.
Oh. Well, I think that is all of the. Oh no, it's not. I wanted to ask you both about the upcoming projects that you're working on. So I guess maybe Hollie, you have a brand new one that came out just today, which is so exciting.
So again, down this whole Cinderella route. So I binge watched the Cinderella Rodgers and Hammerstein version that came, for us yesterday, came back on Disney Plus yesterday, the Brandy version. I think you girls had it there a couple of weeks before us. So I've kind of gone down that Cinderella route again. Again, she kind of, calls back to me every time. I try to say that, she isn't my all-time favorite, but I think she slowly is becoming my favorite, again, with all those variations. So I'm binging back into Cinderella again, looking at the quotes and lyrics of different wording from not just the Disney films, they're again through books, through Rodgers and Hammerstein. So I'll be doing some little bits and bobs on that, and then going back into that kind of inspiration of the Disney parks again.
Yes. So I didn't really mention before, Hollie, you have. Would you describe them as kind of like mock advertisements for different places around Disney World?
Yeah. Again, like I've done them because I couldn't get those prints for myself. And I've got prints from Disneyland, but they didn't have that feel that I wanted. So again, I kind of look at the parks, see what everyone loves, what do I want, and then again inject myself into that whole vintage feel of advertising again. Like I've got a whole Pinterest board of old Victorian advertising pages and boards, so you know, I kind of take from that, but I like to see what's in Disney and then put my own inspiration on that. So I'll definitely be looking at the parks around the world. You know, they're also different to each other as well. There's little different things about them. So for instance, you know, we've got things like the cable car cafe in Disneyland Paris, which isn't in the States. So again, I like to latch on to those different things in the parks and take from those. So that's what I'll be doing for the next couple of weeks during my lockdown here until I go back to full-time work.
That is very cool. And I think that's great when you are a creator yourself and you think, I don't see anything out there like what I want, so I'll just make it myself.
Yeah.
It's wonderful to do that. And then it's, you know, I see you tagged on posts that are shared on Instagram. So I think people are liking what you make.
I hope so. I hope so.
And then Allie, what is coming up for you?
Ooh, so like I said, I do love making paper art, but it's quite tedious and time consuming. And it's something that I've always wanted to make and, you know, be able to sell and share with people, but it's not super practical for me to do it by hand. So over the winter, I got a Cricut machine, which is basically like a smart cutting machine. Like it basically does all the cutting for you, but you can still basically like hand draw everything digitally. And then it's still kind of cutting it out in your own style, but saves you all the time and effort. So I've been trying to make more pieces using that so that I can make, you know, shadow box things and then, you know, sell them in my shop. So yeah, I think that's kind of my goal. And then also like, because I love making Disney art, but then I also try and make more like original art too on this, like for like my personal stuff and things like that. So it's always a balance for me between like, oh, I want to make a bunch of Disney art and I want to do all this like resorts themed stuff and the parks. But then I'm like, oh, but I should also like do some other work too and balance it out. So but I absolutely love what you said, Hollie, about like integrating like Victorian stuff and you're just like creating art that like infuses all of your passions and interests that you can't always find. And I think that's why I love your art so much, is because it does have like a very vintage and kind of Victorian feel, but it's also Disney. So it's like everything I love. And you've just like created this beautiful art.
I feel like we're just going to end up complementing each other. I have to add as well, I've got one of Allie's profiles. I've got the Snow White profile, which again is upstairs at the moment, but I adore it so much. And I've got my little stickers as well from you as well. So I will have to be adding to my collection, but it's beautiful.
Oh, thank you.
I haven't decided what to do with the stickers I have from both of you, because I have on the back of my phone, I have like that. So I don't have room there, but I'm like, I need to put it somewhere. Like this is a big decision to make. So I just have them like sitting where I can see them each day, and then I'll figure out eventually where I'll put them.
I have that same problem. What I've done is like I have some Disney stickers on like my craft stuff, but I'll adhere them using like painter's tape like on the back, so I can still like have the sticker for, you know, when I finally decide where it's permanently going to live. So
that's really smart. That's a good idea.
The other thing I thought about doing, what you could do is, and again, I have to test this with mine first before I do it of yours, Allie, but was to buy some resin and then get some resin molds and place them in there to have like little like trays with like stickers and that in them. And I thought, well, that would be a nice way of showcasing them, but they're currently in my little tray at the moment, so I don't want to touch them until I know what to do with them, but I think that's what I'm going to do with mine. So once I've done, I will show you.
Oh, nice. That's awesome.
Well, this has been so lovely, and thank you for being willing to take the time to do this, and I'm glad we were able to coordinate our schedules.
Yeah, it was so nice finally getting to talk to you both face to face. I know we chat a lot on Instagram, but it's always so nice getting to really like connect with people. And Thank you so much, Kate, for setting this up.
Yeah, of course, of course. So I will have Hollie and Allie's Etsy shops linked down below and their Instagrams, and you can see all of the beautiful art that is on there. And then you will have seen the thumbnail, which features Hollie's logo and one of Allie's pieces of art. So thank you everyone for watching, and I will be back for another video soon.